Now, get ready for Andrea Tantaros.
He might not bring the immigration bill to the floor of the House if it does not have the support of a majority of Republicans. What do you make of that? Is that a good idea?
Yes, because I think if he encourages that and says that and makes it happen, then we'll get a stronger immigration bill. I am for immigration reform, but I think legalization of those who are undocumented should be dependent on border security. The authors, the Gang of Eight, the Senate are saying, oh, no, let's just legalize people with no conditions. I say we legalize people, document them, find a place for them in our country, but do it dependent upon securing the border first.
That was Republican U.S. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. He's the author of Government Bullies, How Everyday Americans Are Being Harassed, Abused, and Imprisoned by the Feds. And he was weighing in on immigration reform, an issue that tops Capitol Hill today and the U.S. Senate, as there are reports that a bipartisan deal has been struck. Of course, yesterday on Capitol Hill, the Tea Party protesting about this bill. The senator joins me now. Senator Rand Paul, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Andrea. Good to be with you.
It's great to have you again, Senator. Now, listen, you're Mr. Tea Party. You gave the response to the Tea Party response to the State of the Union this year. Do you support the Tea Party immigration bill?
The Tea Party immigration bill, what would that be?
Well, they released their own bill earlier this week, which is different from the Gang of Eight Senate bill.
I'll tell you what I've been supporting is, an amendment to this bill that I've said that I would consider voting for immigration reform if my amendment were accepted. My amendment says that any immigration reform is dependent upon border security first, and Congress should get to vote as to whether or not border security is occurring. And we voted on that yesterday, and unfortunately the Gang of Eight and all the Democrats voted no, and so my amendment wasn't accepted. But for me, what it would take to fix this bill is that border security comes first, and then any documentation of undocumented workers comes, but it's contingent upon the border being secure.
Mm-hmm. Senator, that's very different from what Senator Marco Rubio, of course, your colleague from Florida, said. He said legalization first, then border security. He was on Fox News just a little while ago, and he said there's going to be a tougher border security amendment coming. If that's the case, Senator, would you vote for that amendment and then ultimately vote for the bill?
Well, the thing is the so-called tougher amendment, I don't think changes the process at all. It still allows legalization first and border security later. To me, border security has to come first, and legalization has to be dependent upon that. The only way to make it dependent on that is to take it out of the hands of the president and put it back into the hands of Congress. Let Congress vote on whether or not the border is becoming more secure, and let the legalization process go forward very slowly over 5 years so it can be stopped at any point in time if we're not doing what we say on border security.
Mm-hmm. So right now you would not vote for the Senate bill and the Gang of Eight bill?
Unless they make part of the bill that the legalization process is dependent upon border security. I think they're trying to do some good things by adding in to the bill some more significant border security, but they're not changing the fact that legalization will not be dependent upon border security. It goes forward from the very beginning, just like the Gang of Eight have wanted. The Gang of Eight have said, we are going to do legalization no matter what happens. To my point is legalization should only occur if we're first able to certify and Congress votes on whether the border is becoming more secure.
Mm-hmm. What would you tell my listeners, Senator, who are very concerned about the spending and the cost of this bill? They're not buying the CBO's report this week that says it's actually going to save money, much like they didn't buy the CBO's report on Obamacare because it was funky budgeting. So what do you tell my listeners who are really concerned that you and that Senator Rubio and that Congressman Paul Ryan are worried about government spending? You've led the charge on that. What evidence do you have that people, will not just be on the government dole increasing our debt and our deficits with this immigration bill?
I have zero evidence that this bill would reduce the deficit. In fact, I think it's a ridiculous notion, and I agree with you. It's exactly equivalent to people saying, Obamacare is going to reduce the deficit. So why don't we have 10 Obamacares and then we'd get rid of the deficit? Or why don't we have 100 immigration bills and we'd reduce the deficit? The immigration bill will spend $6.5 billion. I have no way of trying to comprehend how we spend $6.5 billion and it reduces the deficit. Now, they must claim that fees are going to come in from all these people, and miraculously, this is going to actually lower the deficit. It's never happened, never will, and this will have a cost. Now, that doesn't mean I'm absolutely against immigration reform. I would actually vote for immigration reform if border security came first, and if there wasn't a new pathway to citizenship in the bill. So there are still problems with this bill.
Do some of the provisions of the bill, though, even though, Senator, if they would put, let's say, border security first, there's other provisions that are deeply troubling. One of them would allow groups like La Raza to have control over the amnesty process, put that in their hands instead of the hands of the Department of Homeland Security. It would also allow them to do the education of American history. They would be in charge of that. Does that trouble you at all? Would you still vote with all these provisions in it that allows these community organizing groups to not just control the amnesty process, but I'm guessing, Senator, the ultimate goal, which is register them into the Democratic Party?
Citizenship and all of the rules and processes and how you get to it really should not be in the hands of any kind of private contractor, so I would oppose that. I have 2 additional amendments that I will try to get votes on, or actually 3 additional amendments, but 2 of them are, one, that we would have to verify whether you're a citizen before you get welfare. The bill says they're not going to give welfare to people who become documented through this work visa process. However, there's no guarantee that there will be a process to check whether you're a citizen before you get welfare. Same for voting. Once you have a driver's license, you can go into many states and say, hey, I'm a citizen, and you check it off. But if the states don't have a process for checking whether you're a citizen, then we don't know whether you are or aren't. So I would say that federal money should be withheld from any state that it doesn't have a process for checking before they give welfare or checking before they give the right to vote.
Do you think that the Democrats simply want this bill to pad their voter rolls, to turn states that are red now blue?
Yeah, I think that their process and their goal is more political than ours. What I would like to do is, if you want to work in this country, we find a place for you, and that you become an American by paying taxes. I'm all for that. But you can't have it with a porous or open border. Milton Friedman said you can't have open borders in a welfare state. We've got an extensive welfare state, so we have to control access to the welfare state if we're going to welcome people to work in our country. Mm-hmm. But really, the biggest thing that drives illegal immigration is the fact that our work visa program doesn't work. This bill actually goes in the wrong direction. It limits work visas. So when you limit work visas, you basically encourage illegal immigration. So there's a lot not to like about the bill. The bill, if it got stronger, I could consider it. But since they've rejected my call to have Congress involved with determining whether the border's secure, I can't imagine how they can get me back unless they come back to me and say, we've changed our mind, we would like Congress to be involved with this.
Senator Rand Paul, what would it take for you to filibuster this bill?
Well, you know, there's sort of standing up there for 13 hours kind of filibuster, which I did previously, and then there's also voting against ending debate, which is essentially a filibuster. Sometime next week there will be a vote on ending debate. Basically, that's when they stop or preclude a filibuster from happening. They have to have 60 votes to do that. Unless they change the bill, I will vote on the side of not ending the debate, which is essentially like a filibuster, but it's not the filibuster people think of. But this happens on almost every bill, and it's called a cloture vote. Unless they allow Congress to vote on border securities, and unless they have border security first in the bill, then I will likely vote as if we were in a filibuster not to end the debate.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you don't trust the Gang of Eight. I think that's where a lot of my listeners stand. They just don't trust the Gang of Eight. Do you feel the same way,
The problem is
Senator?
the Gang of Eight have all voted against every amendment. So we haven't had any amendments attached to the bill because the Gang of Eight, Republicans and Democrats, have unanimously opposed any sense of increasing border security or any amendments like mine that would place border security first before we do immigration reform. So really, in opposing that, and in the Gang of Eight sticking together and opposing things that would secure the border, I think they've distanced themselves from the conservative base of the party.
Mm-hmm. Senator, I know you're going to be pleased to hear this, but my co-host Bob Beckel the other day had very kind words about you in the green room. We were talking about you, especially your position on drones, your position on NSA surveillance, and you and Beckel actually agree on this. What do you think about Director Mueller of the FBI saying that the drones, now that they're flying over the United States, are used to watch American citizens?
Well, I think the fact that I'm attracting Bob Beckel to my side shows me that I've got a chance of attracting a wider audience than Republicans have been attracting, which is a good thing. On the drones and the FBI use, I'm disturbed by the fact that he says he's using drones to spy on Americans, but he is still working on the rules. The fact that they're actually using the drones for surveillance, but they don't yet have rules on privacy. The other question I would ask the FBI director is, are they getting a warrant from a judge before using drones? I'm very concerned about people spying on your barbecue, your swimming, your hot tub, your hunting. All of these things that happen outdoors, I think, are still private, and they shouldn't do it unless they've gone to a judge and said there's probable cause to believe that a crime is being committed. So I'm a big believer that this should not be happening. We should not be crisscrossing the skies and looking at people without direct suspicion and a judge's warrant.
And one of the things that you've said, Senator, that I just applaud you for is you're not buying this notion that 50 terror plots were foiled. All of a sudden the number is 50. They can't give us specific details. And at the same time, we have a president that says, listen, we're not at war with al-Qaeda, yet he's willing to commit resources in Syria. So I guess, whose side are you on, Senator? Is it a Hezbollah or al-Qaeda in this one?
I think it's a really messy situation in Syria. I am concerned that there's about 2 million Christians who live in Syria. They live among the Alawites. They've been protected by Assad. Their sympathies are towards Assad. There have already been reports of Islamic rebels, the ones we want to fund, causing massacres in Christian villages. So there will be an irony to this administration giving weapons, perhaps even surface-to-air missiles, to Islamic rebels who will be fighting against Christians. Also, there's a great irony to the fact that these Islamic rebels are allied with al-Qaeda against Assad. I don't think there are any good people in this war, and I think Israel's actually taken probably the best approach. They've decided no weapons are going to leave the country and go to Hezbollah and Lebanon, and they have been stopping that. I think chemical weapons being spread about shouldn't happen. I think the war spreading into other countries shouldn't happen. So there are things that the U.S. may have to be involved with, but arming the rebels I think is a mistake, and I think being at war in Syria would be a huge mistake. And I think if you talk to our soldiers, not a one of them wants to go to Syria.
No, and I do not blame them. We have no interest in that country. We should follow what the Israelis are doing and just stay out. Senator Rand Paul opposing any involvement in Syria, opposing the current immigration bill because it's not border security strong, and opposing the use of drones flying over the United States. Senator Rand Paul, we appreciate your time today. It's always great to talk to you.
Thanks, Andrea.
1-800-876-4123.